40 with the radio presenter Ian Lee and the theologian Vicky Beeching. But let's turn our attention to Syria once again, should we, with the Prime Minister preparing to discuss the worldwide concern about the ongoing violence in Syria at the G8 summit starting tomorrow. Let's talk to journalist and Middle East commentator Nabila Ramdani, who's here. Always good to see you, Nabila. We've had our exclusive interview with the Prime Minister that we've been showing this morning, in which he's justifying why he thinks the rebels now in Syria need to be armed. There are very big questions about how you get to those, as he called them, the genuine Syrian opposition, isn't there?
Well, absolutely, and I think there is no doubt that the situation in Syria will, of course, dominate the G8 talks, and with the Obama administration making a very clear statement of intent, effectively saying that they are willing to see the Assad regime toppled, and the Americans are effectively giving the rebels the confirmed backing of the world's only military superpower. We are likely to see Britain follow suit, and let's be brutally honest, Britain usually follows the Americans in that kind of situation. But David Cameron made a very clear point, and indeed in his very important interview to Sky News, saying that he considers that Syria's opposition is a force for democracy that grew out of the Arab Spring, and that's easily forgotten. But he also acknowledges the fact that there are very nasty extremist elements that have joined in the revolt, and the huge practical difficulties will be to help the Syrian revolt while making sure that Al-Qaeda elements are controlled.
Which is a problem, isn't it, that we've already seen with what Saudi Arabia's done?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it would be naive not to see that countries like Gulf countries, friends of the West, like Saudi Arabia and indeed Qatar, have already been arming the rebels, and indeed the most vicious elements within the revolt, the revolution from the start practically. And there have been criticism leveled at those countries, saying that they're effectively fueling the civil war. And I think in practical terms, one of the greatest fears of the West will be that those weapons, and especially handheld surface-to-air missiles, will end up in the wrong hands, because they could end up with Al-Qaeda using them to target, to hit Western targets, including passenger planes. And of course, another great difficulty will be delivering those weapons, and there clearly be a need to create some sort of no-fly zone, as we've seen in Libya, but also in other conflicts, including Iraq and Afghanistan to a certain extent. These wars are won by controlling the skies.
And do you think, in your opinion, that the mishandling of the situation in Syria, could that destabilise the whole region? What are the wider repercussions?
Well, very much so. That will be very much discussed during the G8 summit, especially in the wake of the mistakes that have been made in Libya, not to be replicated in the context of Syria, which effectively fueled Al-Qaeda, strengthened Al-Qaeda instead of weakening it. But the regional ramifications will be very much on the mind of all the world leaders. We have clearly countries like China, Russia, Iran and the militant group Hezbollah effectively lining up to support Syria against the West and its allies. And everybody has a stake in all this, and that's going to be part of the discussions.
What about the United Nations in all of this? Because, I mean, we're talking United States, Britain and France primarily at the minute, but I mean the United States is in effect acting unilaterally, or saying it's going to act unilaterally. Does there need to be, is there some sort of consensus that the UN needs to be brought into this?
Ideally, that's what the UN is designed for, to resolve peacefully world conflicts. But as we are seeing in Syria, things are very complicated, and perhaps one of the criticism that observers have been making is that there was an acceptance effectively by the international community when people have been dying systematically since the beginning of 2011.
It's worth just having a thought about Turkey in all of this, isn't it? And what the G8 will be looking at, because it's another developing flashpoint, clearly, which has happened over the last couple of weeks. How much concern do you think there will be in the G8 about what is happening at Turkey in the minute, and the leadership of Prime Minister Erdogan?
Well, it just shows how all these affairs are effectively interconnected, and Turkey will be also considerably worried about the developments in Syria. It has, of course, seen rebel forces it has stopped rebel forces using gas in Syria. So it will be extremely worried about all these regional consequences of any military intervention.
Nabila, good to get your views. Thank you very much indeed. We've got the sport heading away in just a moment. What have you got, Charlie?
Stephen, we're going to be heading to the